The next thing that is in the news, and I feel like has been talked about for a long time, is 4-day work weeks. And Ad Age did a great article this past month about 4-day work weeks in the US and why they're not being adopted. But there's been a huge test in the UK where a ton of companies did this and, kind of reported back on what they're seeing. And so in the agency world, it's really hard to imagine shutting down for 1 day a week that nobody works on Fridays or nobody works on Mondays, because our clients always need things. And even though Fridays are typically a lighter day, I always have at least one call with a client or prospect or somebody on a Friday. There's never a Friday that goes by that they don't need something. And so obviously that is one of the things that they said was, clients need us, so we can't be off if the clients aren't off. But some of these other agencies had some creative ways to work around it that I thought were cool. So I wanted to talk about. One of the things was the agency frames it as 3-day weekends instead of 4-day work week. And so it's more of a perk and a an employee retention strategy to put it out that way. But they kind of go between, some people have off on Mondays, some people have off on Fridays. But other agencies found that made everyone sandwich all of their meetings from Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And it just created a lot of havoc trying to remember who was on, who was off, all of those things. But one of the agencies talked about having Fridays off, but still being available if clients need things, and having people on call. So rotating who's on call for each client each week. And you still have off, but you're kind of available if they need you.
A little bit or something.
Yeah. And saying that even in doing that, they were able to retain a lot more people during the Great Resignation and keep a lot of people as people were quitting their jobs and not coming back to work or getting other jobs. They were able to retain a lot of people. And they said about 30% of people still logged in and did work on Fridays, but it was on their terms, right, on their time.
They can kind of make their own schedule for that day.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. And we do something called First Fridays, where the first Friday of every month we go out to lunch and then take the rest of the day off. And we tell people if they don't want to go out to lunch, they don't have to. They can just take the half day. And we have that kind of flexibility here. And sometimes we move that day around based on what's going on at the agency. But I think people appreciate that when you have a little bit of extra time that you don't have to spend your PTO on.
What's your take on it? What are your thoughts?
On the 4-day work week?
I want to know.
Maybe I'm old school. I can't imagine doing that, but sometimes I fantasize about having a day off when my kids are still at school and no one else is home. So maybe this is the answer.
Yeah. See, I think it could be great. I with everything that happened with the pandemic, people's minds shifted and people are no longer living to work, is the saying, right?
Yeah.
I think people want, quote, me time these days. That's important. That's valuable to them. And they're looking for companies that have that value. And it's why I think all these studies have proven out that it's been positive. I think people will work harder in the days that they're in the office. It might cut back burnout too. I think normally Fridays are light for everyone anyways. And I mean, Thursdays are some of my busiest days of the week. Normally, it's usually when I have all my calls. And if I have to sign on a Friday for a little while just to catch up and get me ready for the next week, I'm fine with that. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. And I just think, of course, corporate America is so against it for the most part. But I see positives in it.
Yeah. Well, I always talk about how when I first started my career, the agency that I worked at was very much, you were there at 8. You did not leave before 5. If you had a doctor's appointment at 4:00, you took a half day. You had to take your PTO and personal time around those types of things. And now the work world is so different where, if I have a dentist appointment at 9 in the morning, I just come in at 10 after it's done, right. Or I leave early and go to an appointment and I make up my work elsewhere because I'm a responsible adult. So I'm doing my work that needs to be done. And it's not about the hours that you're in the building working. And so we have so much of that flexibility now, which I think in the past 20 years has evolved so much, which is awesome. But I still, to me, I can't wrap my head around if the clients are working 5 days a week. It would have to be a full cultural shift where everyone's working 4 days a week. But then Friday just becomes the busiest day of the week to do your appointments and all of those things.
Yeah, yes and no. I think it definitely depends on who your clients are and what you're doing. I mean, for the most part, I feel like our culture here at Cypress North, we're pretty flexible. We're not micromanagers. We trust the people that work with us, which is how it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there are situations out there where someone might not have that option, where they have a very demanding client, and making that type of risk would kind of cause a lot of issues. But I don't know. I kind of feel like, hey, this is what it is. We work Monday through Thursday and we're not here on Friday, so we'll get back to you on Monday. Like I just am like curious like what clients would say if we did that.
So one other thing that I think was pretty interesting, and it was almost a throwaway in the article, they just mentioned it very briefly at the end, but I would love to hear more thoughts on it and what these agencies are doing, is the compensation. So if you are trying to get into more of a pay for performance model with your clients, then it doesn't matter how many hours you work, what you're doing. I always try to create scopes of work where it's not just based on hours. We're always looking at hours as a measure of if we're profitable or not, like how much time and resources did we put into something. But I love the value-based pricing of saying this is worth X amount to you. And it shouldn't matter if it takes us 5 hours or 500 hours. This is worth $10,000 or this is worth $100,000 or whatever that looks like. And I think that having more flexible schedules or having that 4-day work week really opens that up to more like work when you can and when you need to get the job done, and we'll pay you for that performance.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's the right way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I don't think that that's something that people normally think of when they think of 4-day work week. They think of employee benefits. They think of a big perk for working places and retaining people. They think, oh, I could have a 3-day weekend every week, or a day off in the middle of the week if they wanted, those kinds of things. But I think that it really changes how we could price things as an agency as well. And it gives you a lot more flexibility and a lot more to talk about in that way.
Absolutely.